All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see all of you join us this afternoon. Thank you for coming. My name is Shayan Mitra. I'm a professor in electrical and computer engineering, and I was one of the creators of this camp. So let me say a few words about this camp before we hand it over to the people who did the real work. Okay, I'll introduce them in a moment. So, autonomy is a very important topic. It's becoming a very important technology all around us, from vacuum cleaners to cars. And we researchers in the area of autonomy, we feel that this technology should not be just the purview of a handful of big companies. So the technology has to be made available and understandable to a wide variety of people, not just as users, but as developers and people who work with this technology. So that was the motivation behind this camp. And also, it's an exciting topic for young scientists and engineers to get into. Okay. So this summer camp was created based on an undergraduate course at the university. So this is a full semester long course that juniors and seniors in computer science and electrical engineering take. So it was quite a challenge to compress it down to a form distilled enough for high school students, right? And so that's where our brilliant assistants and teachers come into the picture. So this was all made possible because of the hard work of Miao, who's a graduate student in electrical and computer engineering, and Joshi, who's an undergraduate student in electrical engineering, who spent the last 2 months taking the course material that we have and creating new code, notebooks, slides, tutoring material that was made available to your students. Okay, so a big round of applause for Yan and Raj. Thank you very much. I have many other people to thank, but we'll do that in a moment. So first, let me hand it over to Yan, who's going to tell you what this camp was about. Okay, Yan.
Thank you, Professor Mitra. And so in this camp, as we probably already seen, we've done a lot of things on autonomous systems. Mostly we work on autonomous vehicle, and this is the vehicle you just see in the lab over there, right? So overall, there are like a couple major important parts of the autonomous vehicle, and we have covered the basic concepts of all those major parts like in the past few days. We know like what the simulator or the real vehicle will give us. So some sensor will collect some data. Like in the past few days, we mostly use camera. And we know what camera data gives us is some pixels, has some channels, has some pixel values. And now we also did some work on processing that camera raw data into something meaningful. Let's say this is a land, this is an object, something like that. We also learned some basic planning algorithm. We know a little bit about control. So today we all have a chance to go to the real car and make some changements for the car to control the car and make it move. So this is a full loop of how autonomous vehicle usually work. And we've covered like, we've done a lot of experiments, both in simulator and real car in the past few days. So we've seen the Kara simulator, we've seen the Gazebo simulator in the last couple of days. We know something called ROS, which is a communication protocol that's broadly used in robotics and autonomous vehicle area. We've also seen some cool stuff like YOLO, OpenCV libraries. Actually on the car today, like I think most of us get a chance to see some object detection. So you will put a bounding box over the detected object, which is pretty cool. We learned some basic linear command. We know how to use Python to write Python to use those package to do things what we want. And next, I will go through like what we did day by day, do a like very simple summary about what we achieved on each day. The first day, it was the first day we met each other. Everything is pretty new, so we decided to do like a rough overview on Python and ROS, and we also get to experience some Kara simulator. It was a little block over here, but this is actually a steering pedal and steering wheel. So it's a very authentic simulator called Kara. You can drive using the steering wheel and the pedals. I think like most of the students also got a chance to play with that, and that's quite exciting. And on the second day, we go into the perception part. In fact, in the later presentation of the students, we'll hear them all talking about their own exciting findings about this land detection. Basically, the problem is, okay, my camera gives me an image. How am I going to make some sense of those images? And can I extract some important, useful information? Like the green region here is a detected lens. Can I get some kind of this information out from this raw image? And we'll also see many people make some very exciting, many exciting findings about that. In the afternoon, we also go to see some very cool robots. So 2 robots can also do some exciting work like fist bumping. We'll try to track the position of your fist and try to meet it with you halfway. And we see another robot. This robot is a demonstration of how human and robots can collaborate and work together to achieve some task in manufacture. On the third day, we learn some basic control theory. Okay, we introduce what is a PID controller. Actually, this PID controller is what we also deployed on real car today. So we did some preparation on how to tune the PID values. We set up a leaderboard so everyone can put their own like land detection code, how well their land detection code is, and to the leaderboard. And everyone get to see their own results and videos as well. In the afternoon, we have another demo. This demo is provided by another lab, and they bring in their Terra Sentia robots. This is a small robot on the ground. All of us also had a chance to play with it, control it, moving it, turning it, rotating, see some of the sensor. It also does something about mapping the environment. It uses a sensor called LiDAR to scan through the whole environment and construct a map corresponding. In the fourth day, which is yesterday, in the morning, we learned some basic planning algorithm. And in the afternoon, here's the exciting things happening. All of us went to this facility, Taipei, and thanks to the hard work of Hang, Yang Ge sitting there, we got to see a very cool lab tour. This is Hang and Professor Mitra explaining the car vehicle to everyone. And we also get a chance to get on the car to control the car with joystick ourselves, as well as like using script to do a huge loop following waypoints. Those are using the script to drive by wire to go through a lab is done automatically. No human intervention are needed. So that was pretty cool. And yesterday we are checking about existing code, existing work, and how that works. And today, this is the most exciting part. We get to deploy what we just learned in the past 4 days, like land detection code, setting threshold. And when students setting the threshold themselves, they can see how their own code is deployed on the real car and how the real car is acting accordingly to their programming. So I believe we will also hear more about the students, but for now, that's just the overall overview. You see, we can also do some object detection on the stop sign. We can do a land following. So yes, that's just the 5-day overview of what we accomplished in this 5-day camp. The time is limited, but we have covered a lot of materials, and I believe this will be beneficial for all of us. We all learn a lot from each other. So I think Adam is online. Yes.
Right, so if you can bring up the slide with the acknowledgement. Hi, Adam, can you hear us?
I can.
Yeah, his audio needs to come on the big TV. Can you still hear us, Adam?
I can hear you.
No, your audio is not coming out on the right speaker. Let's fix that. Can you say something again?
I am here.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So we have everyone in the room here, Adam, all the students and many of the parents and folks who helped us run this camp. So let me, as I said, I have many people and institutions to thank, but none of this would have been possible without the support of the National Security Agency's Science of Security program, okay? So as I mentioned, Jan and Raj worked tirelessly over the last few months to create a lot of the content that made this camp happen. And they were supported by a grant from the NSA's SOS program. So the National Security Agency, as you know, is the premier security agency for the country, but they also support a lot of foundational research in many universities, including Illinois, CMU, MIT, and so forth. And we are very lucky to be supported by NSA in research, as well as this outreach program, which made this camp happen. So I've invited Dr. Adam Taggart, who's one of the program managers of NSA's Science of Security program, to tell you a little bit about NSA and also the kind of opportunities that they provide for undergraduates and high school students. There are a lot of outreach activities that the NSA is engaged in. So with that, Adam, maybe you can take over. Do you have slides to share, or do you want?
I do have slides. So
okay, so we'll let you control the screen sharing, and you can take it away from here.
All right.
Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here today. It's really a great opportunity to support.
Background, maybe, yeah. Let's see the room a little bit.
I still don't have permission to screen share.
1 second. How about now? Can you try now?
Yep, I got it. Let's go with presenting this. All right, everybody see slides?
Yes.
All right, everyone. I'm glad you all had a great week. Seeing your overview, it sounds like it was a whole lot of more fun than I had in this past week. Which, I didn't get to write code and drive a car with it. So, congratulations on your successes. And so I'll just take a couple minutes to talk about what is the National Security Agency, where am I from, and what do I do, and how some opportunities for people who are interested in doing things. So let's just talk about a little bit about the NSA. So the first part is, who am I and what am I? I am, as my wonderful introduction said, I am a technical lead for the Science Security Program. This whole program is, the goal of this program is to understand what are the fundamental concepts in cybersecurity, do it not just for NSA, but for as a country as a whole. Is really important for what we all do in cyber. We're all making decisions every day about that affect cybersecurity. And instead of just relying on, what feels right or what I did before, or, some things like this is the way we've always done it. Well, let's have really great scientific projects that look at it and say, well, this is what the science actually says. We've done rigorous examination of assumptions. We've looked at various ways you can look at the things and say, this is really what it is. For example, let's use a fun, easy to understand example. We've all seen passwords. We've all created passwords, and we have guides online where you're trading your new account and says you need to have an 8-character password. Well, this seems right. Everybody else is doing that. Other people. So what would actually be there? Well, when we actually look at the scientific evidence on it, you can say, well, we can start basic. Let's just say my PIN for my ATM card is 4 digits. And it doesn't take us a real deep understanding to say, well, that means the possibility goes from 000 to 9999 and every number in between. And so I have about 10,000 combinations, which isn't really great because a computer that is trying to break it can probably run through 10,000 combinations pretty quickly. Instead, so we make it more complicated. We add letters, we add capital letters, we add special characters, and we make it longer, all about making it more complicated. And that seems good. That initially seems like that's a really good way of approaching it. But if you actually think about it from the point of a person who's breaking the password, you realize that they're not going to start at 1 and go to 2 and go to 3 and eventually, start at A and then add B. My dog has joined us today. Say hi. Anyway, so instead you do the scientific evidence and say, well, how does an adversary attack this problem? And the first way I would do is I wouldn't guess your password is A. I would look at all the data breaches. We've seen all these passwords that have been exposed, and we can build statistical analysis of what's the most probable. So we know the top passwords in the world are password 12345, 1234556, and variations of that. So if I was building a real password guidance, I would take that into consideration and provide guidance that really, is more useful and makes it hard for someone to guess. As a result, organizations have come out with passphrases, which really make the remembering concept, difficulty concept, and it all works well together. Now let's talk a little bit more about the NSA, since we want to focus on these things. So we go from my history. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention my history. I did a computer science degree, undergrad at Princeton. I did look at, my research was on why do people not install security updates. And then I went to Carnegie Mellon and did my PhD in engineering and public policy. And I specifically looked at what are national cybersecurity strategies that are effective in poor and little countries. Like I specifically focused on Rwanda and Tunisia and actually did a lot of my research on those countries. All right, back to NSA. So what is NSA? We are the nation's code makers and code breakers. Effectively, our origins are all about figuring out how to do cryptographic protection of information and how to defeat cryptographic protection. And you might think this is a modern thing, but the history of this, at least in the United States, stretches back over 200 years. Even in the revolutionary times, cryptographic concealing messages was an important aspect of what Washington was doing. You might have seen a TV show Turn, where Washington uses some type of cryptographic algorithm. They're not using fancy encryption of today. For example, one of them was this thing where you would write out a letter. Well, actually, you had this shape template, and you wrote your letter within that. And then you take it off and you fill in the words around it to create a completely different message. So it's super, super hard to do because you need to actually write 2 letters and make the second letter look like it's the real letter. So lots of challenges there. But NSA's actual founding stretches back into the 1950s. So here's some of the history points of the pinnacles of cryptography in the more recent time. I'll use the Zimmermann telegram. That was an intercept message from Germany to Mexico, where Germany was trying to motivate Mexico to attack the United States and enter World War I. It was intercepted and it was published and really changed the Americans' perception of World War I. So all that is important. We can go up to Pearl Harbor and Battle of Midway. Midway was really a turning point for cryptography and the idea that in breaking Japanese codes, you knew where the fleet was going to be and you could develop a plan around it. And then we can keep going into that. And now we're up into not just secure, we have a mission of NSA, of protecting NSA networks and providing it's in the cyber world now, because the internet is just as much of importance as anything else. So who works at NSA? Well, we kind of like to think of it as a highly skilled and trained place. We're a huge employer of math PhDs, but that's not the only requirement. NSA is like a small city with every skill you can imagine being really relevant to being accomplished in the NSA mission. So there's PhDs in like cybersecurity, mathematics. That's one area, but you might think of some of the other areas like buildings and construction, like electrical and even, not to diminish it, but plumbing is a huge aspect of it. We have a very extensive woodworking and 3D printing. And when I say 3D printing, yes, it could be in plastic, but it also could be in titanium, because a lot of materials and equipment used to do all this stuff has to be custom built. It's not something you can order on Amazon. At least, hopefully not. And the other thing that I don't specialize in at all is the idea that language is hugely impactful for NSA, because as a international foreign intelligence agency, intelligence is in lots and lots of languages other than English. So NSA is really big into linguists and speech analysis and those things that convert, between the spoken and written words into understandable information to have, get that information advantage to provide our intelligence, our leaders in our government, our military, and our partners to actually have a full understanding of what's the best to go on, because you don't want to make mistakes there. And what kind of people are there? So we all have diverse skills, we all come from different backgrounds, and we have different educations, and it really does take a city to put it all together. And one of the things that's probably unique about NSA it really is compared to a lot of other places, is we work side by side with military. So there's about 40,000 NSA people, and we're made up of contractors, civilians like myself. I wear a t-shirt to work every day. I have colleagues who are in the various military branches in uniform in our offices, and we work side by side. The civilians like myself, we can deploy, and so far there's been thousands of civilians that have been deployed to various places all around the world to fit that mission. So let's talk about the mission. So there's two parts. The first part is signals intelligence, and this is about collecting signals to produce foreign intelligence. And you might be thinking, I know what signals are. That's about reading email. Well, it's a lot more than that. So let's talk about what are some types of signals intelligence. There's the common. That's the part, the communication intelligence. That's the part that you really think about so much. Intercepting communications. In World War I, it was intercepting Morse code. Modern days, it's all sorts of digital communications that people use. You can think of all the different ways people can communicate. So it's made the world much more complicated to gather intelligence and make sense of it. Now, these other two, ELINT and PHYSINT, they're actually, to me, these are some of the coolest ideas of things that you do. ELINT, electronic intelligence, is about collecting the RF signals that devices produce. You might be thinking, what produces that? Think radar, like in the graphic here. You can see the little graphic of the little radar system going up to a U-2 spy plane. Well, collecting that signal helps you to understand how the radar systems work, and you can develop counter responses to it. And the first spy satellites, you might think they were super fancy cameras that orbited Earth, but the original spy satellites were called GRAB and POPI. GRAB stands for Galactic Radiation something. Its job was to fly over the Soviet Union, collect the signals that were coming off the country's radar signals that are well inside the borders where you couldn't fly a spy plane to. And then when it came over Allied territory, repeat the signals back. So that way the country, the US, could have a much deeper understanding of how the systems worked, where they were located. And thus, if there was ever the horrible idea of a war with the Soviet Union, we would have much more insight into what was going on inside in the country, where the stuff was, where things work, and how they work, and how do you defeat it. Now, the third part of this is the foreign instrumentation intelligence, PHYSINT. This is a lot of times devices report information back. You've seen the NASA launches or SpaceX launches where you can see the telemetry coming off of the fancy new rocket saying we're at this speed with this acceleration, this much fuel is left. All that kind of stuff is instrumentation that's coming off the rocket. And it being that's broadcast as an RF signal, you can intercept it and make real use of it. So that's the third type. So you want to look at a foreign weapon systems to understand their capabilities of the information they're communicating back. And this intelligence really does make an impact. Here's an example from working in Iraq. Up until about 2007, improvised explosive devices really were causing a big impact for casualties. And one of the things you can see in this chart, there's a really change in the things was, and this RTRG, real-time regional gateway, which really improved the performance of moving intelligence from collection to actual boots on the ground. And as that came along, you can see the effect of providing more intelligence had great reductions in deaths. And so intelligence really does have a great impact. Now, the second part of the whole thing is the cybersecurity aspect. Cybersecurity, NSA, as knowing the signals intelligence, knowing how communications can be intercepted, knowing how RF emissions understand stuff and tells away things, you can use all that to actually protect US stuff, because if it provides such a great advantage to US intelligence, the reverse is absolutely true. So for NSA, we are responsible for protecting US national security systems. So think military communication systems, military networks. It includes presidential communications, where the president can talk in top secret information. You want to protect those things. And that NSA is the agency responsible for that. If you're thinking about other parts of the protecting US government, there are parts of other agencies with the US government, like the civilian side would be reporting to CISA, the part of DHS. And you can see we have the NSA Threat Operations Center, which is, really our real-time watch floor to really provide that stuff. And, they have really worked at making it all, it looks like it would come out of Star Trek with, the giant screens on the walls, with the round desks. It's really quite the operation, and it has the impact. Now, you probably want a job. It's really kind of great to do things, but at some point you want to start thinking about what would you do. For me, you might wonder if you haven't figured it out already. NSA hires pretty much all skills. You got the STEM world, we got the law and legal. We want to have the lawyers make sure we don't do anything illegal, as we want to respect the laws that Congress passes and everything along those lines. Language, huge part, and even the business and financial side. So all that, everybody has a part at NSA, and we have both internships, scholarships, if you need to work about college, and even co-op. Now, where do we get to actually work? So I work at the Blue Dot, Fort Meade, Maryland. So I am in Maryland with plenty of heat and humidity right now, though I'm not sure my colleagues in Augusta, Georgia, San Antonio, Texas, Denver, or Honolulu. Well, I'm sure the Honolulu people are actually really enjoying life, but the rest of us, there's plenty of heat out there in this country right now. So these are the major facilities, and then as I mentioned earlier, you can deploy and go anywhere in the world. NSA has a huge opportunity for foreign travel, foreign work, and so those things come together. But how would you actually apply if you were interested? So just like myself, I applied online. I mean, I started off at nsa.gov, but then I quickly found the website now is intelligencecareers.gov. You can see on the next slide. Apply online. It's really, really that easy. I highly recommend when you fill out your resume and stuff on the online website, include information. That information there is what we have to make decisions, and it's really real people that look at it. I run an internship program, and with all the applicants, I'm looking at all the resumes, reading the information to really select the candidates that fit with what we need to be done. After you apply, you might get you may get a phone call about to confirm the information, because some time can pass. There can be a technical interview in the process, and for NSA interns, people get top secret clearances. So for that top secret clearance, there's the clearance process, there's the psychological evaluation, which is like a 300 question multiple choice question. It's not something to get stressed about. And then the polygraph. So polygraphs can be fun. Maybe fun might not be the right word to be using. Polygraphs are an interesting experience. It's not like the movies. There's nobody screaming at you saying, please tell me what you did on the night of September 5th. No, polygraphs are about asking yes or no questions. Like, have you provided intelligence, classified material to a foreign government, for example? And you might be wondering, what's the point of this? Well, there have been spies in the history, and they said, polygraphs would have been a deterrent for me. So that's part of the reason why we have them. And the key thing about getting an internship at NSA is thinking ahead. You know, the security clearance takes time. So you really need to apply. And specifically, internships for NSA occur in September and October. And earlier you are, the more opportunity, not the more opportunities, the earlier you get evaluated and provides more time for the clearance. So if you're going to want to intern at NSA, apply early, September 1st, hopefully. So it's less than a month away. And we hire anytime after you graduate high school. So any of your college years, your graduate school years, your PhD years, there's always an internship that fits with your experiences. You will get a conditional job offer that just says, NSA says, I'm interested in you. Let's talk about the security clearances. And eventually you'll get to the final job offer. And as to internships, there's lots and lots of internship opportunities. All sorts of things, such as cybersecurity, math, science security. That's mine. That's more research focused. And you just apply to your subject matter area. Now, if you ever think about careers, you apply when you're getting a fall before you graduate from college, and you can apply to regular jobs, or same website, or you can apply to development programs. Development programs are like an experience to spend a few months, maybe 6 months in different offices, building up your skills, and at the same time exposing you to the broad breadth of NSA activities. So you do all those things. So with that, I'm willing to answer any questions that you might have in mind. Is there something that you always want to ask an NSA person about? There aren't any dumb questions. The only thing I won't answer is what is my password. I know better for that.
Thank you very much, Adam. I can take any pressing questions and just pass it down to Adam. Yes.
Since he mentioned about internships for the young kids, so what do they actually look for when interviewing? What kind of skills or mindset do they look for?
Adam, did you get that? So what kind of skills and mindsets do you look for in young applicants?
So I look at somebody who really shows that they have a passion for the topic. In my case, my internship is about cybersecurity research. And I'm looking for skills that really you can apply to cybersecurity research. Not saying I need somebody who's like, I have developed my own quantum resistant algorithm. What I'm saying is I want to say somebody who says, I really am interested in this, and I have done things that really show that. For example, attending a summer camp at University of Illinois about cybersecurity is a great thing to see on a resume. I'm sure all of you might have something there. And yeah, that's the main things, because sure, when you see in a relevant degree, you want something in computer science, math, engineering for my area. But if you're applying to business, if you have a business degree, that is just as applicable and relevant. Yeah, so I just like showing that they're passionate about what they're working on. Now, if only could I figure out how to get my Zoom window to be on the same window as my monitor, that wouldn't look so ridiculous.
And Adam, do the students at this level also go to all these 5 locations that you mentioned, or they're mostly at Fort Meade?
For interns, since the internship runs between 10 and 12 weeks, sometimes college comes back fast, unfortunately. Your summer breaks aren't as long as you hope they are.
All right.
Sometimes they're 10, 12 weeks, and we put you in a internship on a project that's really relevant to what you do. So I have 2 interns this summer. One is looking at proving the security of software. The idea is, how does software meet the requirements, and doing solid state states of analysis in that. And the other intern is in machine learning, and she is really advancing machine learning and dealing with malware type things. So they're really 2 great projects. They're teamed up with their mentors, and they're having fun this summer and learning about NSA.
Great. Any other questions?
So when starting age, anybody can get an internship.
I think he said like high school onward, right? The starting age is the question.
Starting age, you can really start applying in your senior year of high school. Technically, we have a high school work study program, which occurs during your senior year of high school, but you need to be close to one of our research facilities or NSA facilities in Maryland, Texas, Colorado, and Hawaii, where you split time. The morning you go to class, and then you come and work at NSA in the afternoon.
Any other questions?
If no one else, I have asked another question.
Sure. Yeah.
So out of like, what is the percentage of the kids getting recruited? Like, out of 100, how many get a chance to?
From the internship program into a
Oh,
regular.
no. When kids apply for
Oh, I
internship,
see.
like,
I see.
how many students do apply
I
and
see.
how many get selected for that?
So Adam, I think the question is about how competitive it is to get in.
It's competitive. So for last year for my program, I reviewed about 2,000 applicants, and we made job offers to 20 some. But before that discourages you, a lot of people don't know what they're applying to. So so there's a lot of applicants who apply to things and say they apply to things that they may not be really interested in. Like I am really excited to. Oh, I've gotten plenty of resumes. I'm really excited to work at the FBI, and I'm really interested in being an FBI agent. So you know, there's those. A lot of people. So yes, there's 2,000 applicants, but of actual people who probably applied to the right internship, there's probably a couple hundred. So it's surprising that what people apply to.
Thank you for
That's
that.
great. Yeah, I think that's very helpful. Thank you very much. Okay, great. Shall we move on to the next part of our program then? Yeah, thank you very much, Adam.
It was my pleasure.
So, yeah, we'll come back to some of this, but you can take over now. All right, so yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So a major part of this camp is besides on teaching technical stuff to everyone and make everyone like kind of understand what the autonomous vehicle is about. Another major part of this program is like to give everyone a chance to speak, like express what they have learned, like practice their communication skill. So that's why like by the end of every day at the first 4 days, we also ask everyone to like do some simple short summary of what you have done. And at the last day at today's final presentation, so everyone get a chance and we'll use slides to like practice how to speak, how to present, and go over what they have learned and what they think can be improved in like throughout this 5 days summer camp. So without saying too much stuff from my side, I will just hand over the slides to Norsing. Welcome.
Make sure the camera is playing when I'm feeling the
Right.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nsa. I have worked in C++ before, but that's all I knew before I came to this camp. An introduction. So our research goal was to create a software of the autonomous car and design the computer to detect the lanes for the car to go in. Interesting things I noticed and learned along the way was I learned about ROS, which is the robot operating system, and basically how to use it. I learned the basics of how to use Python, and yeah. Something interesting was that without lane detection, the car can't stay on track. So it's really important. And I didn't know that before. My favorite part of this week was getting to see the robots and interact with them. The steps that I took to reach the goal, I had to understand the material, of course, and how the terminal works. That's the terminal over there. There was a lot of debugging and fixing code that we had to do to make sure that the lanes in the road were detected by the computer. Here is the speed gain and the steer gain. The speed gain, you had to adjust it for how fast you wanted the car to go, and the steer gain was how fast you wanted it to like make turns to right or to left, and you had to adjust each number to make sure that the car doesn't flip over. Some of the problems, so when we were running the cars, the lane detection system didn't work if the gaps like between the dashed white lines were too long. So I had to adjust the road on the simulation to make the gaps shorter so that the lane detection system could work. And yeah, lane detection system is very important, and it's a key factor for the autonomous car to function properly. Here is some of the code that we worked on. Here, we have to cut out like the amount of green space in the road so it could like match up to each edge, so it could detect the lines. And we had to mainly work on, I don't think it's showing up here, but there were numbers and we had to like adjust the numbers to erase the green space. Here, this is the Gizmo simulation that we worked on. And this was RViz, and the terminal is up there. My average error was 256.65, and the average error was like how much the car veered off of the lane and like the mistakes it made. The smaller the number, the better the lane detection system worked, basically. We made our code onto computers here and then went out to test it today. And these were basically our results. So the lane detection system worked, and the blue lines means it's detecting the lane. And then it would make up its own lane, which is the red line over here, if there was no lane, until it would connect again and be able to detect the lane again, and it would be blue. So some takeaways from the camp, I think autonomy is really cool, and it's also a hard thing to like comprehend. Coding takes a lot of trial and error to make it work and to get everything the way you want it. If I had the chance, something I would have done differently is to take more time to understand everything better, because there was a lot of material that we had to learn in just 5 days. So, thank you.
Ready to go next.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Jeremiah Robinson. And I'm doing another presentation of the auto control cars here. So, okay, for the introductions, basically, I was writing the code on a tiny car that was perfectly sorry. Sorry, sorry, guys. So basically, I'm presenting the code on the car that's perfectly driving on the road. And the goal of this whole thing was to completely get the white car on inside the white lanes. So far, my favorite part of the week was trying out the new fun driving simulator in the lab and see how it probably works. And also experiencing new things on campus really gave me some ideas on what to do in life and to find some different colleges to go to. So the steps I took was I watched videos from the web, collected images, used lane detections to see where the vehicles are going, use codes to adjust the car speed and turn, use an alternate desktop to run the code. Yeah. Now I ain't have time to show the videos. The interesting things along the way is patience. Because when I tried this for the first time, I didn't have patience at first. But along the way, I learned how to be patient throughout. So, I don't know how to put this in words, but like, here's a link to a video of what I did at the end.
It's probably only accessed by your own accounts. Maybe you talk about what the video is about.
You can take a moment to figure it out. Like, let's get the access and what will it take? Maybe Jeremiah has to click some buttons on your phone or your computer to get you access. You'll be fine on time. There you go.
There you go.
I'm sure it's recording again. Yeah. Thanks.
So as you can see, like, this is how we ran the car with this code right here. It really took a lot of work to do. So you see it driving on the road. I wouldn't say road, but like between like the white lanes.
So that's a real car.
This is the real car.
And sorry. And I had some problems how to run the car on the computer. I run the car on the computer, so and how to control the vehicle while running the code. So how I solve those problems is how sorry. I got some other scripts from the previous web page, then entered it into copy and pasted it into the previous executing. I'm sorry, you can get to finish this last one. So what I learned from these challenges is I learned how to revise code. And,
What you like most about this?
oh, okay. I'm not. I didn't know how to explain this part. So.
Yeah, this
But,
was your pretty close to your first time writing programs in Python, right? So
yeah.
a lot of learning happened in working with Python here.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think you did great.
Thanks.
Have another slide. Or is that okay?
In conclusion, I was gonna say I learned that coding in this format wasn't easy. It takes a few steps one at a time, although I had no experience with this type of coding before. And patience is key if you're doing anything. Because there's ever more time to upload the demonstration results a bit earlier, but it's all right. What I really like to do, as me as a person, I'm a person that likes to model and create all sorts of new things on the computer. So like, I'm a computer use type person. And that's the end of my presentation.
Max, you ready? Let's welcome Max.
Hello, I'm Max, and I'll be talking about a smart lane detection system. Before this camp, I've only had a short class on Python. So the goal of my project was to take camera footage from a simulated car and look at a simulated road and use it to guide the car into a lane. So first you had to filter out everything into black and white, so you only left the lane markers white. So you would take the yellow lane markers to the left and the dotted white lines to the right and make those the colors white so that they stand out to the computer. So this makes, so you also have to make the car stable while you're going on a curved road, because when you're going on a slant, you won't always see all of the lanes correctly. So, and tinkering around with my code and seeing what happened was the highlight of my week. So after you got your initial code, there's a lot of steps that you have to take after to really try and improve your code. So there's a lot of guided trial and error, and you have to scan through your initial code and double check everything to try and reduce all of the bugs that you could have. And then you have to understand why something that you changed worked and why your initial code didn't. What I learned from this is that computer vision and code in general is very sensitive. You have to map, for example, like if I try to see the image that the computer takes in from the code, I have to change the brightness of the white lanes to the max, because I can't see the difference between pitch black and one shade above, but a computer can, but I can't. So adjusting small things also means that you probably have to adjust everything else, even when the smallest of things can make or break your code. And trying to filter out all the colors can do more harm than good, because if you restrict everything, then you can't see anything at all. So here's some of my code. As you can see, this is pitch black, and this you can see the. So the only difference between these two lines of code is that this has an a line going through here. So that means R, and this has an and, so which means and. So the difference between these two is that it block out everything. It would just make everything black, and this allowed the white line to appear. And then down here you can see this is the green grass that you have to filter out, and this is after you filter it out, so it looks much more cleaner. So here are some of the photos I took of the car that we saw yesterday and today. It's very similar to the simulated car. It's basically a replica. So some challenges I met along the way was that the colors wouldn't be filtered correctly. Sometimes it filtered out all of the colors, and you saw on the last slide that it would just give you a pitch black screen. And sometimes the lane detection flickers between the gaps of dotted white lines, because the dotted white lines would end, and then between that gap, it would pick up the green grass. So it would shift its block to it would think that the green grass was a lane when it's only the yellow and white lines. So solving these challenges required you to experiment with your code, with like changing all statements to and. Like you saw, it went from pitch black to the lanes. And you also have to find accurate color ranges to filter out. So if you filter out too much, then that means that they're probably not going to see anything. If you filter out too little, that probably means that you're gonna see everything instead of nothing. And you also have to test individual groups of code to isolate bugs, because you would see what the computer would see in one function, and then you would see what would happen after everything is combined. So what I learned is that code requires you to keep track of a lot of things at once. So changing a single value in relation to everything that you have after. So you have to change one thing and then another thing that's related to each other. And there's a lot of ways that you can improve and change your code, but those require time, patience, and failures before you can actually see the results. And the output was that my code was fairly accurate. So it filtered out all of the colors except for yellow and white lanes well, and achieved an average error of 247.79 pixels from the center of the lane. So that basically means that my code was around 250 pixels off on average from the exact center of the lane. So it would pick up 250 pixels away from the center of lane, which is pretty good. So the average variance is 36.75, which basically means that the smaller you have it, the more stable your code is, because it shows how much of a difference between certain values you have. So compared to my old code, which was 266 pixels to 250 pixels, that's much better. And also from the average variance of almost double, so 70 and slimmed it down to only 36. So these are my two old codes. So this is the old code and this is the new code. And you can immediately see that this is in between between the lanes, while this is detecting up this. So it thinks that this is the lane. Well, in reality, it's only this. So then you can see between each line, it would shift to the green line because it thinks that this is the lane. So it wants to sort of shift the car to the grass. So the takeaway from this is that coding is a long and difficult process. There are endless amounts of things that you can do with code, and it takes a lot of time to understand what's going on. But at the same time, it's really rewarding to see what really happens and what you can make with code, because there's so much that you can do. And playing around with your code also improves it and gives you a deeper understanding, because you really just have to use more code to understand it. So what I would do differently was spend more time on my initial code. So a lot of small mistakes and dumb mistakes came from me rushing my code and trying to access the simulator as fast as I can. So if I didn't rush, then I wouldn't have to spend as much time trying to debug my code. So during the week, as the first presentation said, we saw a lot of demos from groups across a wide range of topics. And I think that just shows how diverse engineering at UIUC, and there's a bunch of things that you can do. And I think just in conclusion, autonomy is a very difficult task to do in the real world because there's so many things that we find easy, like a flock of geese crossing the road, or like walk signs that block off a path. But you can't really code a computer to really think the same as an adult.
Hi, I'm Ashni, and I've had some experience with coding before. I've done HTML, CSS. I did C++ as well, which is pretty similar to Python. And I did Python, although it was a few years ago, so I didn't really remember as much of it. So the goal of this project is to make the autonomous car perceive its surroundings and control itself to follow rules. This is the simulation, and as you can see, it was pretty good. It went in the lanes. And my favorite part of this week was controlling the vehicle. It included proportional speed, proportional steer, derivative speed, and derivative steer. And these 4 values didn't exactly work, but they were what you had to change to and you just have to like get the right numbers in order to control the vehicle. I did it like day by day kind of thing. So the first day we did basics of Python, basics of ROS, and we ran an autonomous car in a simulation. The second day we did filters on a camera. We learned about like the Gaussian blur versus a regular blur. And we also did autonomous car sensing in Python, like cameras, which could sense the edges as well as the color. We also did like ROS autonomous car sensing in a simulation and watched demos of human interacting robots, which was really fun. The third day we controlled autonomous vehicles in a simulation, coded in Python to find like the right numbers, as I said before, to control the vehicle. And we used ROS to run the simulation. On the fourth day, we learned about mapping and the importance of initial position. For mapping, like it was mostly learning about sensors such as radar versus LiDAR. And we also drove an autonomous vehicle using a joystick. That was a really unique experience. And the fifth day, we improved the lane detecting system and activated lane detecting system in a simulation. And after activating it in a simulation, we applied it to an actual autonomous vehicle as well. So some steps that I took to reach the goal was moving the car through the track using basic steps in Python, for example, forward, backward, right, left. Then moving the car through the track using lane tracking system, again, the edges as well as the color, and control of speed and steer, as I mentioned before. Something interesting that I noticed along the way was that computers are very precise. It's an advantage for calculations and like math, but a disadvantage when they interact with human-built items because of human error, which leads to a computer error. Oh, and that part is the lane detecting system code. So the first part is, wait, hold on, over there is for detecting edges, like the lanes, and then the second is the colors. The main results from this project was a vision-based lane tracking controller. This is a picture of the lane detecting system on an actual autonomous vehicle. And my simulation, the one I showed before, it was 247.81 for average error, which is pretty good considering it's one of the lesser numbers. As mentioned before from others, the less the number, the better the detecting system is. So some challenges I ran into was controlling when the lane marking was separated too far, such as here. As you can see, this gap versus this gap is pretty different. So what I learned from this challenge is that there are many factors that could make a project or a robot unpredictable. This part was where I had most trouble around here, and that's the actual track for the simulation. My main takeaway from this camp was that coding requires an abundance of testing. You just have to run again and again after changing the code. And if I had the chance, something I would do differently was make the car more controlled. Despite my attempts, I wasn't able to get the car to move perfectly around the track. If I had the chance, I would spend more time on it and try to actually solve the problem. So time was kind of limited, but my perspective on engineering at UIUC is that, well, throughout the week, many demos were shown that demonstrated projects that UIUC is currently working on. Each one of them is unique and on a whole other level for technology. I think it's really great. And I think that's the end of my presentation.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jad, and I will be explain my overall research goal of developing and coding in a lane system using Python and multiple different programs that we used in the past 5 days. So I've taken intro to programming in my freshman year of high school and AP Computer Science principles in my sophomore year, which both are JavaScript, so I'm pretty new to Python. So my favorite part of the week is using different applications to simulate the car's lane detection, such as RViz and Gazebo. These are the softwares for simulating. I also enjoyed using ROS, which is software which includes tools, libraries specifically for building robots, and OpenCV, which is a computer vision software, and Visual Studio to code the car, which includes lane detection, speed, steering, process of filtering colors, and a lot more. So what steps did I take? I used a lot of trial and error, changing the values of the car, used a process called thresholding, which converts an RGB image into a binary image in order to make the image easier to analyze. Scanning and checking through my code multiple times for any errors, and troubleshooting / debugging if I run into any issues. Many interesting things I've noticed along the way. I've learned the hard way that changing one small value can impact the entire script, which taught me to code my lane detection step by step rather than just doing everything all at once, getting lost in my own code. So therefore, I document my code, lets me know if I need to make any changes if needed. So here's some images. I don't know if you can see that. That's the lane detection. This is the filtering. Everything becomes black and white. And I think I need to sign in to see this. Yeah. Yes.
An example of testing, testing the slide.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, this is the car on the track with the lane detection system. As you can see, let me speed this up a bit. Turning on its own. And this is the code used on the actual car, on the track outside. So as you can see, it turns red once it like makes its own lane kind of. And then it goes back. Okay, so my results have highly improved over the course of the lane detection system. So yeah, I need a. Okay. So here's the lane detection. Okay, we'll wait for that. Anyway, my average error rate has decreased. Previously, it was at approximately 270, and currently it's at 253.11. So this number represents the amount of pixels from the center of the lane. And my average variance level has also decreased. Previously, it was at approximately 60, and currently it's at 48.36. The smaller the number, the more stable the car is. And yeah, that's the lane detection. So the main problems I've ran into, the lane detection system flickering between lanes. Sometimes it would switch over to the opposite lane on certain points of the track. So the way I got around these, I rearranged the map with some minor adjustments in order for the car to read the lines on the road and use more accurate ranges of color to prevent the car from moving onto the grass or into another lane. What I've learned from these challenges, as I maneuvered around these obstacles, I learned how important using a simulator is. Help me gain insight and replicate how the car will perform in person, so you can safely experiment and solve problems in the code before implementing it onto the real car. So it's a much faster and more efficient method, not just for creating a lane detection system, but in general as well. So my main takeaway from this camp was a much more in-depth view of how much research is actually put into autonomous cars than I initially expected, mainly with the use of identifying obstacles and filtering colors with different types of cameras and sensors, such as light, radar, and LiDAR. Things I would do differently if I had the chance. If I had some more time, I'd find some ways to improve the code, since some portions of it were slightly rushed towards the end. There were some minor bugs, but overall it worked pretty well. And finally, my thoughts and perspective on engineering at UIUC. I have a pretty positive perspective on engineering here. Definitely offers some of the best options in the nation. UIUC seems to be very well organized and is a top university that I plan on attending, hopefully. And yeah, that's it.
Hello, I'm Pranav. Today I'm going to be talking about computer vision. But before I start, I just want to talk about my experience with programming. So I've taken both AP classes on programming, so that's computer science principles and computer science A. And I've also experimented with Python on my own. But this is my first time experimenting with autonomy and computer vision. So it's a very interesting experience for me. So an introduction to computer vision. So computer vision is just a computer's ability to extract data from its environment using data from various sensors such as cameras. So as you can see here, this is a computer vision model running. So you can see like boxes surrounding cars, and it's able to identify what each object in the frame is. So what do we use to do this? Well, first we use the Python programming language. So the Python programming language is a multi-purpose programming language. It is very versatile. It's widely used for computer vision and robotics. We also used a Python module called OpenCV. So this is a module dealing with computer vision, and it allows you to manipulate images and pick certain parts out of the image that you will need to do computer vision. Third thing we used is ROS, which stands for Robot Operating System. It's not actually a real operating system. It's mainly just a communication protocol to allow different subsystems of a robot to communicate with each other. Finally, we used Gazebo and RViz, which was our simulation software. It's used to visualize what the robot sees and also simulate the environment around the robot. And here are some of the logos, and that's what Gazebo looks like at the top. Right. So how do we do lane detection? So the first step to doing lane detection is we need to collect images from the cameras. So that would be this thing on the left here. Next, we need to filter out unnecessary noise from these images, such as road imperfections, leaves, and other things in the road. So we used a filter called a Gaussian blur, which I will talk about later. All right, so the next step is detecting edges and certain colors in images. So to detect edges, we used a filter called a Sobel filter. So a Sobel filter, it detects contrast in the image, the difference between 2 pixels, and you can set a threshold to determine whether it triggers for that certain pixel. And finally, we combine all of the things that I said before into a binary, a black and white image containing just the information we need. And that's this picture on the bottom here. And I have something else here. And this is the black and white image from the car, which I will talk about later. So I talked about these 2 filters before, but let me go into more detail. So here's some filters for computer vision. The first is the Gaussian blur. It's used to average out, used to remove noise from images by averaging out all the pixels around a certain pixel. And that just removes noise and unnecessary objects that you don't want. The next filter is the Sobel filter, which, as I said before, is used to detect sharp contrast in images, which allows for edge detection, as you can see here. We also use the Hsl Color Space, which is the primary color space used in computer vision, especially for lane detection. It stands for hue, saturation, and luminance. And finally, we used a control method called PID, which allows you to utilize data from a feedback loop from sensors, and it allows you to do control the car using those inputs. And as you can see, here's an HSL color picker. It's It's pretty different from an RGB color picker, but I mean, the fundamentals are still about the same. And that's a simplified version of a PID control system. As you can see, as the value changes, the orange line is able to compensate for those changes. All right, so here's some of the challenges I faced. So first, for the simulator, one challenge I faced was picking color constraints for the lane detection software. And so the way I solved this problem was by using a color picker utility, as I showed before. And I converted RGB to HSL values, and I constrained the colors with a margin of 25 units to make sure that I only select a certain color. And in the car, one challenge I faced was picking the correct PID or control values for the acceleration. And how I solved this problem was by incrementing it slowly. So this is through a process of trial and error. So I incremented the values by 0.1 each time to determine the optimal control values. And here are my results. So for the simulator, I didn't really get the best results. You could see a bunch of the other campers here got a much better result, but this was pretty good. Some more tweaks I could have made some more tweaks to this, but overall it was all right. And for the car, this was much more accurate than the simulator. It was very precise, it was smooth, and here's a screenshot of the simulator running on the actual car. Here's some pictures I took on the car, so you can see the steering wheel turning inside. There's the car rolling. This is all autonomous. And there again, you can see this, the lane detection. So here's some more specific quantitative results. So for the simulator, here are the color constraints I used. So for the hue, I selected 30 to 80, which selected just the yellow part. And for the white line, I used the luminance value of HSL, and that selected anything with a brightness above 230. And for my average error, I got 258.84 pixels from the center of the lane, which is about 3.5% below the benchmark. And for the car, here are the constraints I set. So for the white line, I used the blue RGB channel from 215 to 255. And for the Sobel filter, I set my thresholding from 120 to 255 for the binary range. And for the PID constraints, I set the P value to 0.5 and the D value to 0.1. So in conclusion, some of my main takeaways for the camp were how to use OpenCV and the usefulness of algorithms such as searching and image processing to autonomy. If I had the chance, one thing I would do differently is to take more time to learn about tools such as ROS, RViz, and Gazebo, as these are really powerful tools, and I would have loved to be able to utilize them more. And finally, my perspective on engineering, on the engineering program at Uiuc, is that it's extremely thorough. It covers many fields in depth. It also covers autonomy well, as we were able to learn the basics of autonomy in basically a week. So thank you, and especially thank you to Jan, Professor Mitra, and Raj back there. Yep, thank you for making this camp possible.
Great presentation, everyone. I'm putting great efforts, and you all did a very good job, I think. We are also very proud of you. In this progress. Professor Mitra, you want to?
So I think just a couple more things to do. We'll hand out some certificates and maybe a couple more people to thank. But I do want to echo what Jan just said. You all have done brilliantly. Well done. Very well done. I think it is fair for you to brag that you might be a few people on the planet to code a car before learning to drive a car. Okay. So yeah, why not, right? So let's hand out the certificates, and then we can do the final vote of thanks. So Ashimi, Congratulations. Well done. Max. Congratulations. Pranav. Well done. Joshi, congratulations. Well done. Well, Maya. Congratulations. Jack. Congratulations. Well done, all of you. Okay, so last but not least, I need to thank a few more people. So first of all, there were a bunch of graduate students who stepped up and literally did a lot of hand-holding for the campers to be able to do what they have been able to do in this short amount of time. So Younger Lee, please, if you can stand up. He's a PhD student. Thank you. And Hang Tui is also just finishing his PhD and helped with all the transition of the code from the simulator to the car would not have been possible without Hang's help. And there are a couple others who are not here with us today. They're traveling, Dawei Sun and Chao She. Okay. Secondly, we are using a lot of facilities here. We use powerful computers with GPUs in the lab, and we are using this vehicle. And all of these are kitted out with the right kind of software and tutorials so that the campers were able to use them very quickly in the last 5 days. And that has been possible because of the support from the Center for Autonomy in the college. So this is a new center with about 40 plus faculty members with lots of interesting research happening. And we are also building up this infrastructure to be able to do these courses. So thanks to the Center for Autonomy. And finally, the WISE program. Thank you so much, Lara, for making this happen. With all the logistic, administration, registration, food, thank you, so that we could just focus on the technical stuff and rest of it was so smooth for us. Thank you very much. And it would be remiss of me to not mention Pat Grenda here. Pat is online. Thank you very much for helping with the logistics from this Center for Autonomy side. Thank you, Pat. Okay, so I think that's it. Thank you very much, the parents. Without your support, we would not have had the wonderful campers. So thank you for bringing them in. It was a real pleasure to do this. Thank you.